Hi, I'm Tony O'Neill from Simplified Gardening, and my garden has undergone a huge transformation over the last couple of months. And in today's episode, I'm going to take you around. I'm going to show you what's changed, and we're going to look at some plans for the future and what's coming up on Simplified Gardening. We all know that winter can be a harsh couple of months with all the cold, frost, snow and even rain. And let me tell you something, it has rained here. In fact, this is probably one of the driest days we've had since November. It's been absolutely crazy. But just because it's raining and cold doesn't mean that there's nothing to do in the garden. And I've been getting busy with some jobs in the garden, which I'm going to show you now. But let's start down the other end. So let's take this area for instance. There's been a few changes here, and as you can see, I've totally refurbished all of these compost bays. Now, the reason for that was that the plastics that I use, which is like a floor covering we use on this, was starting to degrade. Now, these compost bins have been here for around about 6 years. While we were at it, we built some new fronts because the fronts were starting to get old. When we first made them, we used some pallets that were quite thin because they were just easy to cut the ends off and slot them in. But these have been made out of much stronger material, so they're much tidier. And we've given it a coat of paint just to really bring that up. In this area, we used to have a big, huge fence here that had sweet peas growing along it. And there was like a little border here that they grew in. And now, as you can see, we have quite a large growing bed down here. We can use this for growing all sorts of stuff. At the moment, it's just got some of the native soils in it, but we will cap that off with compost. And here you will see an addition to the water system that we have here. This is a 1,000 litre IBC. Each of these IBCs forms part of a water system that I have here. Now, we have 21 of those now on site. We used to have 18,000 litres, but last year I ran out of water when we had that really hot spell. And although I've got a tap just out the side there, it's linked to every other tap on this site, and the pressure's really low, and when everybody's fighting for water you can never get any. So we decided to buy another 3 IBCs, and then we utilise those into the system. So if we look over here, I have more compost bays. These compost bays have just all the old stuff just dumped into them, and we've just been piling up stuff off the garden here. This one, however, had grass over the last year just piled into it. And I mean lots of grass. This all came from a commercial grass cutting company that I happen to know is organic. And all I did here, I wanted to do an experiment on both these bins here. In this one, we just piled it high with grass, let it sink and kept piling it high. We filled it up with 17 van loads of grass, and and each time it would be mounded up like this, and then it would sink down. We would just dump more on top of it. And this was done to show you what happens with grass when you just pile it up. And eventually we will lift these and we will have a look at that. Likewise with this one. This one was all the fruit prunings from the garden. As you can see, there's still some on the top here. And again, we just piled it up high and we've left it open all winter. And we're just going to see what happens with that. Now, what will happen is we're going to bring both of those bins. We're going to open them and we're going to have a look at the layering within those 2 bins so you can see what happens over time to those ingredients when they're just stored. Now, here we have another bed that I put in here that is new, and as you can see we have the garlic coming up in here, and this whole bed is garlic, so it should be quite good when it comes to harvest time. They're looking quite strong, and these are nice deep beds, so that's good. So if we look at here, we've got the cherry trees. They've all been pruned back and they're doing really well. Now, each of these trees along here has 3 different varieties on it. So we have multiple varieties of cherries all within this one section. You can see the beds all have green manures in them. Now, we were doing a trial. Now, normally I sow my beds with 3 different green manures. We sow with field beans, hairy vetch and ryegrass. But this year I've sown just specific green manures in them. And we had some really bad frosts over the last few months, and the field beans have been checked and knocked back on it, but the hairy vetch has done quite well. That's not to say they've all been bad, but this is really open ground here. Okay, so what we have here, guys, is all of the garden waste. It's been dumped in a big line across the garden here. We have 20 1-ton bags of leaves down there, and they're going to end up in that end bin. When I get around to emptying that, we will shred that. So this area of the garden's been pretty much like a dumping ground for resources. This is not waste. All of this here is all wood chip that came out of this one path that ran up to the shed up there, and also here. So the great thing is, this stuff is like soil already, so this is going to make an excellent ingredient for our next compost. Under this here, as you can see, we have a load of cow manure, and that goes right across the garden there as well. So we have plenty of resources going on with what's down there and on this garden here to make up the next 8 ton of compost, or 9 ton of compost. And this is what we will be using for that. Now, this area, I had to completely dig right through here. Now, this garden is 95% no dig, but I had to dig this because we put a manure on here last year and it was absolutely plastered with bindweed, and it was growing like you wouldn't believe. So I double dug this whole area. It needs leveling off, but it's too wet to actually get in and work anymore at the moment, and I'm going to end up destroying the soils. Now, I'm not adverse to digging if I need to. I'm happy to dig. I prefer not to, because I think that we destroy all of that sort of fungal and microbiological action that's going on in the soil. But we will get this bit sorted out. So we've dug this out. We have had tons of bindweed out of it, and this will get leveled off now, and hopefully that'll be the end of that issue. And this area here, all these beds, we've got some old kale over there, but again, we have field beans, and as you can see, they've had a bit of an hiding with this frost. Here we have hairy vetch, but this is the good thing, right? Even though the tops of this green manure have been damaged, the bottoms still are doing their thing. In the ground, we still have a root system that's feeding the microbiology that's in the soil. On this root system, it is producing these. These are little nodes that produce nitrogen. So this is still feeding the microbiology and all the fungal networks that are in my soil. It's also creating pathways as well. Those pathways, when we terminate the top of the growth of this and put it in the compost and leave the roots in the system, as they rot down, that's creating air channels and water channels, which builds that structure of your soil. So even though they aren't doing brilliant at the moment because it's so open up here and the frost has hit them, they are still doing the work they need to underground. They still stop in the compaction, they still stop in the erosion, so they're still working. That's the main thing. The roses have been pruned, and that's it for this section of the garden. Let's go and have a look at the bottom section on the other garden. All 8 of the beds along these 2 sections, again, have green manure in there. Like I said, it's been checked with the frost, but over the next couple of months, this is going to shoot up. We're going to get some really good top growth on it, and it's still feeding that microbiology. So if you see here, the rhubarb is starting to push through the soil, and that means that we're going to end up with a really good growth. Now, this is the time that you need to feed this stuff. Get the nitrogen on it now. This fence here is coming out. That'll have a new bed put in along here. The asparagus bed is looking good. It just needs a little weed. Along this section here, we're going to have a very small path up there. There's going to be another asparagus bed just waiting on those crowns to come. This birdie's bed, I gotta say, grew fantastically last year. And we filled it with hugel culture, and I'll put a link in the description for that video. But this sank a lot, so it shows just how much a hugel culture bed will sink. This is a high bed, we're talking 3 feet, 2.5, 3 feet. But we topped it up again with all old compost, and that's now ready to go. Likewise with this one didn't sink as much, but we've still got all of the strawberries in here, and we're just going to leave these. We're going to tidy it up, and we're going to let them establish in there as a strawberry bed. The herb garden last year done absolutely brilliant. We did the bulk of the pruning on there. We've already seeing growth coming through this now down the bottom, so I've got to get in and cut out all of last year's growth. We can see we took the top off it, but we now need to get in and take all this wood out. But it's all starting to come back slowly. The chives are coming back well. These are all starting to come back well. We just need to get in there and just do a little bit of fine tuning. This is a new bed, and it's got grass seed in it and all sorts. So we are going to have a little bit of work on this. This was filled out of all of the stuff that come out of the chicken pen this year. And basically, it's big railway sleepers that we took from the base of the shed. So it's going to create another big bed here. We'll probably likely put lettuce or something in this because of obviously any shade off the netting here. I'm not sure yet, it might even be a flower bed, but we've got to deal with them bits of grass coming up in there. We have another IBC. This is the second of the 3 extra I bought. Now, the reason that I bought these is that this IBC is going to look after these 4 or 5 beds that are here. The IBC that we passed just down by the fruit cage will look after those 4 beds. That IBC there will look after those 4. So we've got an IBC that's looking after 4 or 5 beds. So you haven't got far to walk if you want to water. And the tops are cut out of all of these so that we are able to just dip a watering can. So this IBC is now linked to those 4 up there with a pipe work that I can literally just pump straight into it. These taps that run on all of these posts down the garden are all linked. The idea being is that this ground can actually support all of the water by me moving it around, and we'll show you a video on that at a later stage. Okay, so this area, as you know, is the well-being garden, and it's something we created so we could chill out on an area where we took down a big shed here that happened to fall on me, and we created this little cubby hole in effect. And what it does is allows us to have these cold frames, so we can actually get in there and we can store all of our seedlings straight out of the polytunnel into the cold frame. So that's now all finished. We had problems before where we wanted to build the shed properly. The only way that this shed was standing was because of this pergola I put here, because the winds knocked it to death. And that's one of the massive projects we've had going on this year, and I'll talk to you a bit more about that in a moment. As you can see, the tunnel is in a massive mess, okay? It's been a dumping ground. It's one of the reasons why I haven't grown any sort of food throughout the winter, because I wanted to use this as a dumping ground for this project, and we're going to go and look at this project now. For those of you that know this channel or have seen it over the years, you knew we had loads of sheds down here, and I took them all down and we left one shed in particular, and that was this one, which was built out of all glass windows nailed together with doors nailed and panels just literally all nailed together. The structure wasn't very safe, and when I took down the end of this shed here, we put up this frame here to make sure that it couldn't go anywhere, and we had a real bad storm through winter that made that shed sort of go on a tilt like this. With that, I decided that I was going to completely overhaul this shed. As you can see, we ripped out this wall and the back wall, and you'll see that in a moment. We've put a new roof on it, and we've gutted the inside because the inside was also dangerous. And if I take you up here now, so as you can see guys in here, sorry about the echo, but we've got some really good strong shelving, and it's that strong that I can literally just get up on here and stand on there, which is what we needed. Now this side is going to end up all being for storage of various things like the stuff that's dumped in the tunnels at the moment. This side, however, is going to be for 3 gravel trays on the top and the bottom, and they're going to hold all of my plants, like my chilies, my tomatoes, my aubergines or eggplants, whatever you want to call them. Now we've painted this with OSB3. It does bleed through the paint, but it's only just to brighten it up a little bit in here. Around the wall in here and the ceilings and things like that, I have this, which is mylar, and this is a reflective silver foil, if you like. That's going to be going on the walls, and we will eventually get round to putting lighting in here, LED lighting on the top and the bottom, and we will also heat this with a diesel heater. We're going to be running the LEDs off some solar panels I'll show you in a moment, and we've actually insulated this roof. So now when we put a new tin roof on this, we felted the battens first and then we put a tin roof on, and the reason we did that was so the felt would help protect against the tin from actually dripping back into the building. But we found that didn't quite work, and when we put heat in here, it's going to be even worse. So what we decided to do was put some insulation up there, which you saw the roll in the greenhouse, and we've boarded it with this thin board as well, which is now sealed that in. So hopefully that should do the job. It'll keep the heat in here, and this will be a very useful shed. But as you can see, it's now a real solid shed. It's worth, you know, it's a usable shed. The double glazing door that we had is now on there as well. So it's a good, secure environment. Let's go and have a look at this tunnel. Now, as you can see in here, this has been a dumping ground for all the stuff that come out of that shed as well. We've been working here, cutting up timber and stuff for that shed while the weather's been so bad. This tunnel is absolutely bogging at the moment. It needs a complete strip and clean. So that'll be one of the next jobs. Now that shed is finished, we can start getting things back on the shelving in there, and we can get through here and get this ready for all the seedlings that are about to come. So this area under here, guys, obviously these are the panels that are going to be going up on the roof. This was the shelving units that were at the back. We use this for storing pipe work and wire and things like that. They need tidying up, but essentially we will use that as well. Now this section here is another, or the third IBC I should say, and this IBC is another one. We've cut the top out so we can just drop a watering can in, and eventually it will be linked up to the other 5 that's here. So there's 6 IBCs in this row here, so holding around about 1,000 gallons, I think, something like that, maybe a bit more. Along here, as you can see, we've got all the containers stacked on top of the raised beds that we grew the carrots in last year. All of the old roofing that came off that shed roof is stacked here on top of the potato stands and what have you. The poultry are doing fine, as you can see. They need a good clean out. They're still covered over because of the rain, but we've got some plans for those as well. Now, this section here needs a good sorting out, but we've stripped it right out. So this section here looks a bit of a mess, because it is, but we've literally started stripping this out. Basically what's happened, this tree here has gone absolutely bananas on us. It's broken all of our fence, so that's, you know, it's pushed it all in. We can't do nothing about it. But the worst thing is it's actually put a root through this pond and it pierced the liner. So during the summer it drained on us. So what we're going to do is we're going to revamp this whole area. We're going to make the pond bigger. That's if I got the time this spring. And we're going to do this area some more justice. This little section behind the poultry here, I don't know if you can see. So this section behind the poultry here, we are going to put in a 6x4 shed, and this will be a new coop. It'll be easier than cleaning the coop that's in the actual run itself. Down there is another IBC that actually feeds the birds with all the water. That's a standalone. It's not part of the 21,000 litres because I didn't want that being contaminated with anything that ends up in the water containers over there. Okay, so this side of the chicken run, I created a new door in here that allows me to get in a wheelbarrow, okay? Because the biggest problem I had with the small thin door on the other side was I could get in there, but I couldn't get a wheelbarrow in. So what that meant was at cleaning time, I had to literally shovel it out of the doorway and then collect it off the floor. It's much easier to produce a bigger door and do that. This area here is still being used a little bit like a dumping ground. We've got a couple of trees that have come up that don't need to be here, so we've got to pull them out and get rid of some of this guttering and things like that. But the trees themselves have been pruned and we just need to get some bark chipped down here. Likewise with this fruit area, this door is open because we've had some blackbirds and thrushes get into this netted cage. And I think they're coming in around the top of this door, which was why I built this flap to go over the top. The thing is, they still got in here, so I've left it open for them to come in and out. But what we need to do in here is just get through, just do a little bit of weeding and a little bit of pruning, and then this cage will also be really good. It doesn't need a huge amount of work, so that's good. This is the shed wall on the other side. Now solid back wall where the doors used to be and all the windows and things, so that's now all sorted. And essentially that's going to bring us back to where we started. For those of you that have followed me for any length of time, you know that my garden seems to have been on like a Z shape. Well, this year the lady who had this section of the garden down here gave up, and there's no one left on the list. So we have an internal rule that whoever's next door can take over that land. So only on a temporary basis. I'm going to take over this land. It's going to be in Tina's name, just like the fruit plot, so that she can just come down into it. And we're going to also grow on this area here as well. And it's quite a large area, but we've got some work to do. Just like the fruit cage area and all down here, we've got to get rid of all this scaffolding. Now, I've actually donated all that to somebody else. The greenhouse down the bottom's also been donated. So this area is also going to be grown. Now, I think the plans for this year for this is, because it's going to need a lot of work on the soil, is that we will strip out anything that doesn't need to be here. And then we will grow something like some of the giant marrows or the zucchinis, the pumpkins, things like that on this area to act as a ground cover. What I don't want is it growing a ton of weeds and then seeding the rest of the garden. So as you can see, that shed was a massive project this year, and we've also done like the compost bays, and the ground's all ready to go, you know. So there's lots that have been done. There's still loads of things to do, like clean up the tunnels and things like that. But essentially that's where we are at the moment with the garden. It hasn't helped that I've been ill as well, and we've got the compost to make and so much stuff. So when I did that shed project, I took video snippets throughout it. I didn't film it properly because I didn't want to have the camera in the way and risk knocking it over and everything else. So I just took snippets. Now, if you want me to put a video together with that and do a little bit of voiceover, I think I could probably do that so you can see what went into creating that shed from a structure that wasn't very safe. If you want that, let me know in the comments below and I'll see what I can do with that. So there's just so much happening here at the moment and loads of changes going on, and we've got that extra bit of land now, so that's all good. If you want to see what else we've been doing in the garden, or what the garden looks like, you know, in the sort of springs and the summers and things like that, then I think this is the video that you should watch next. I'm Tony O'Neill and this is Simplified Gardening. See you in the next one. Bye bye.